Hello, and thank you everyone for joining us for the Word this January evening. Thankfully, the last Wednesday of winter. And spring is on the way, everyone, just to let you know, which is great to know. I'll just begin with a bit of housekeeping. If you could all keep your profile on mute during the reading, please. And you can use the chat option to submit comments and questions, and you can use this throughout the evening. I'll read these out during the open Q&A section at the end. Those who taking part in the open mic should unmute themselves as we get closer to the end of the open Q&A. So on behalf of Sligo Library, I would like to welcome you to the Word this evening in conjunction with IT Sligo BA in Writing and Literature. This evening we are delighted to be joined by poet and self-described subsequent author, public speaker and art journalist Eileen Myles. She will be followed up by upcoming poet Oliver Diarmuid. Jessamine O'Connor will moderate the evening and informal Q&A. Before I hand you off to Jessamine, I just want to let you know about February's edition. We're going to be joined by Irish academic, feminist and LGBTQ activist Alva Smith, up-and-coming writer, co-founder of the Trans Writers Union and Small Trans librarian James Hudson, and Ireland's premier non-binary drag entity, Evoke a Reaction. Lou McGrath will represent Sligo Library for the evening. We're also looking forward for your feedback for an LGBTQIA library collection we are currently developing. I'm going to put the link for a survey into the chat option, and you can copy this and fill it in your own time. So now I'm just going to officially hand you over to Jessamine. Hey, Jessamine. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you, Michelle. Thanks a million. So I'm just going to introduce these two writers, which I can't wait to hear from them both. And Eileen is going to start, and then be followed by Oilibhéar. So I'll just say about Oilibhéar first, because I know them. Oilibhéar Diarmuid began writing poetry at 19 and has written about 400 poems in the 3 years since then. He is a final year student in IT Sligo's Writing and Literature programme and is working on a portfolio containing a fictionalised dream diary and a poetry collection. He's been published twice in the Cormorant and has had 6 of his poems published on Poethead. In 2020, he won first prize in the inaugural Comórtas Filiachta Cultúran Macadam ó Fiach for his Irish language translation of the poem Fáilte. He writes in both Irish and English and translates his own poems. His poetry focuses mostly around the idea of art house love, the study of communication through wordlessness in relationships, particularly queer ones. He currently lives in Ventry, County Kerry. And Eileen Myles came to New York from Boston in 1974 to be a poet and subsequently a novelist, public talker and art journalist. Their 22 books include For Now, which is a talk or essay on writing, Evolution, Afterglow, I Must Be Living Twice, Chelsea Girls, Cool for You and Inferno. In the late 70s, they published the poetry magazine Dodgems, and from the 80s have collaborated in lots of theatre work, and including writing for an opera. They have been exhibiting photographs, and in 2019 made the short film The Trip. Eileen Myles has received a Guggenheim, a Warhol Creative Capital Arts Writers Grant, 3 Lammys, Lambda Book Awards, and a Pioneer Lifetime Achievement Award. In 2016, they received a Creative Capital Grant and the Clark Prize for Excellence in Art Writing. In 2019, a Poetry Award from the American Academy of Arts and Letters. In 2020, they got the Bill Whitehead Award for Lifetime Achievement from the Publishing Triangle. They live in New York City and in Marfa, Texas, with their pit bull, Honey. Welcome, Eileen.
Thank you so much. So I don't understand, am I beginning? Is that what's going on here?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, okay. I didn't realize that until I heard the introduction. So, okay, sure. Well, great to be here in Sligo. I'm just going to charge in. I'm reading a pile of poems, some of which are completely new and others are sort of ancient, but I love. And so I'll just get into the first one is called Held. I forgot the distant pink behind the trees. I was heading to the supermarket. I would get it later somehow in the parking lot, perhaps on my phone, my butt on the boat, and the pink comes back in memory. And this one's called A Little Bit, and weirdly, today, January 27th, would be my mother's. My mother died 4 years ago, but today would be her 100th birthday, which is sort of incredible. I mean, she died quite old, but she didn't quite make this. It's called A Little Bit. It's a little bit true that the hole in my jacket pocket, the breast pocket, yeah, all relaxed, has a hole, and pens keep slipping through. One's in the lining, but this one, perched. Now it's a writing bird. Silly black out there wants to tell its song. Manuel's book was in the air, and I was on a train. My feet are cold, and you wouldn't be in the air so long. It doesn't happen like this. There's no climate on a plane, and I was in one, but not on Earth. My mother is gone. Each little thing I do is a little bit wrong. I'm willing to apologize, but they never help. It's just pointing out the hole, and people forget, but I won't forget you. And this is sort of semi-new. It's called, I love this game, Göteborg. It's just the town of Gothenburg in Sweden. And it's dedicated to two women, Daphne and Alice. Came home and lost tons of consciousness. For a time, I stole trays from hotels, and now I steal cups. There was this towel I really wanted. Sweden knows towels. There was a shirt at the airport, white, sort of flocked. Mine in every way except for this girth. I bought the girth a burger, and I nearly missed my plane. I ran and my heart pounded. I was not so fast. There was a man running with me. I yelled, 36, in camaraderie, but he ignored me. But then he started dropping shit. I've been there. There's so much coffee. There's plenty of coffee. I wish someone was here. I'm becoming so sensitive. A person who has slept 10 hours. I'm like Vincent Price in Anything, my soft voice whispering anything. There was a woman in my poem, in my dream, and she looked like someone I dated before. No, she felt like her, like she was going to be her, and it was an intense time in both of our lives. She was finishing something, and I was making a mountain of sleep. It was possibly crazy, and she was humoring me, but I felt our gap about to be closed. It must be true. I thought, it feels this way, the two someones about to become us. This geological drama, tons of time manifest like persons. I was slowly heaving myself forward to close the small distance, and I was struck in the dream by the fact she was anyone, and I do this, make her mine, to share my coffee. It is better now. Students, the coffee is good. It has become right for me in the day. And this is the relationship I wanted, the dark liquid waking me up in a stolen cup. This one's called Pencil and Pen. It's very new. A minute is so long on my birthday. Snow feasts on the open air, and she bought me flowers in my color, which is orange. My color is orange? You don't know your color is orange? I do, but it is such a gift. Myra had snow. I said, I want that. And now it has come. 71 is a birthday of tiny gifts, crafts and tinkers just like this. This one's called Pink Margot. It was kind of a commission to write about a painting. And then a woman named Margot had just died, so I made it be a twofer. Pink Margot 2020. The crouching businessman is not sitting with his love in the landscape or alone on the fire escape with his red hair. I see 3 yellow buildings in a dark night. I see a back turned to me this year, and I am sad. Why do I like buildings? And fire, the final painting, is. I am not in this show, and when I counted horses, I landed right here, where horses begin. The problem with eternity, there's just no way to see everything. In a pink painting, I miss Margot, but not all at once. I miss her again. This one's an oldie, but I think maybe for me, maybe my favorite poem I ever wrote. So it's called Writing. I can connect any two things. That's God. Teeny piece of Band-Aid, little folded piece of Band-Aid. I ran to the bathroom to see my face. Sometimes I don't want to see my face in the mirror. Sometimes I can't bear my thoughts. Sometimes I can't do anything, but that's okay. Band-Aid, book, God. That's right. There's a whole bunch of poems that are kind of very COVID, like written very much from the time of staying in constantly and time itself being like a weird thing. Time today. I sit down to tie my sneakers and honey floods in and flows to my other side. I'm unwrapping time today. No, I'm rewrapping it. It's been loosed and I need the strictures back 'cause fear's out there and it's ambling tooth. Okay, this one, I was having a long distance relationship during COVID, so it's kind of to my girlfriend, this one. It's called Put My House. Put my house inside the boat. Can we do that? Put my dog inside of your dog. Put these birds inside of yours. Put my ocean. Put your ocean all over my mountains. Put my mountains in there. Put my dog in yours. My dog walk is safe inside your dog walk. Let me eat inside you. Let me eat your food. Let me eat your house. Put your house inside my dog. Put your dog on my boat. Naturalize. Put my heart in yours. Put my mouth on your mouth. Put my hair in yours. Let me breathe inside you. Let me smell your guts. Put your boat in my eye. Let me eat your friends. Put these hours inside your hours. Eat this bird cheap. Eat my dog's foot. Eat the ocean. Run to him or the ocean. Run to them. Hear these birds cheep. Fly to me. Eat my foot. Put my house inside yours. In your mind, I think. Me fly, this fly, me home, love me now. Forget the phone, eat my heart, run to him or the ocean. Tweet, 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 dog growl, cluck, click. Put my house right in there. Yeah, that's me looking out. The window, look at me, bark, bark, bark. Put your heart inside that bark. This one might be entirely obscure, but I'm going to indulge myself. It's called Nantucket. I was actually writing a TV show about American history called Outta Here, and so far it's gone nowhere, but I've written a pilot. Nantucket, an episode of Outta Here in which I have finally taken the Thoreau walk for the New Yorker, and all the pilgrim ghosts and Native Americans are swarming around me like crows. And this one's called Memorial Day. Cat jumps into a dumpster shopping. And this one's called Love Song. The sky hates me. I must be calm. I must be calm. If I have any chance of goodness at all, a child in a snowstorm, a man faces death slow. A gibbet is hanging. I don't know what it is. For a few dollars, I can save a horse. A deer must hide. My dog is far away. Your dog, a joker, is close. A man travels with a wolf, and that is Victor Hugo. His inkiness is pure translation, perhaps. I have charm in my native language, shelves pushed up against each other to jam the door, flinging it open. I am terribly in love with you. I cite your gifts. I suggest I am best without you, and yet this yellow wind I saw the day you were there, and I never felt such desire. I say, I am in decline. How could you possibly want this? Alone, I'm strong. Alone, I'm a muffin. I offer you a piece of my charm and relinquish my attachment to being a hermit in an old wooden house. I am kindly to your child. He is ours. This one's called Hello. Welcome to things as they are. It feels young. A woman speaks with a beard of light. The silence reminds of when I began and you were coming at me, normally speaking. I would speak, but I think I'll just listen tonight. She dyed the darkness and the light. I know I could have died like him. Each NYU kid leaves a plant or a clack of wooden spoons. His row of plants, the party, continue into her light. Thanks for tonight. Thanks for the light. I'm them and my spooky light, spooking me. I'm writing. I watch. I got a bunch of, I'm moving towards the finale, and there's a bunch of weird vampire poems coming now because two things. One, in New York City, there's a park called East River Park, which is my most beloved neighborhood park. And the city of New York, which is kind of a monster, is so open to real estate interests, and they're literally considering destroying our park for a bullshit real estate deal. So there's vampires in real estate, and I've been watching True Blood, so these things come together. So this is called Beloved Park. The city is like a mismanaged notebook found on a bench by a hopeful man who spun a tale for the city that wanted to change. But once the notebook was his, he began tearing out and selling its pages. One page, the park we love, sold to a man who insisted he could make the park a boat. But where will the trees go, we cried, and the birds that are living in them? The park sailed away, and that man's dream. It's the corruption of government. It was my bench. It was our page. This is our sunny day. And continuing on that vein, this is called The Park. Politicians are like actors, and real estate investment groups are like vampires. Politicians think they have to let bite them or they won't get any work. The rest of us are humans living around the show. Squirrels are squirrels. Birds are birds. Our park is a giant stage we thought was real because we walked there every day. It is a set that Robert Moses built so that he could run his highway alongside it. My dog knows the story. You know the story. Everyone knows the story. The vampires are building a giant boat on top of our park in order to save it. It will take them about 10 years. The waters will rise. The children will be old. I will be dead. The vampires will be rich. The politicians will drink the blood on their shelves from when they were in that play. And this is probably the last weird vampire poem. It's called Beloved Train. Vampires cry blood. Each poet is required before the time of their death to stay up and write a vampire novel, even though the light doth kill them. Daylight kills vampires, as you know. It will be a short novel. I desired to burn like Joan of Arc, being woman, man, saintly, and the flames made me be something magnificent. And what was the story? A novel requires a novel, a hall, a corridor, a prismatic corridor. Human bodies are coming down while being alive, which we, the dead, watch. The candle, the human lights, is a tiny bell to the vampire. He comes one night and puts his cold hand in my mouth and demands that I stop changing so he can get his story out. A dog pushes the thing against the thing, in which I emboss the book, glinting, and the ancient word boss, a strange globe from which spin forth the armaments of the vampire's pain, his long life, his very long life. A warrior once, a housewife next, pad on a dog's toe, sore, another time, maritime, always getting licked, the dog putting her damp paw onto the ground in the night before the day in which the vampire was born, he died. I have failed in my task of writing my vampire novel. I will never try again. But in the time of a global pandemic, rules have changed. No more essay portion of SATs. No more this. No more this. No more this. And now my final poem. And the title of it is my girlfriend's name, but I haven't showed the poem to her yet, so I think it's unethical to read it before in public. So just imagine a human name at the top, which is very much hers. The center of the universe is here, and I continue to read things about millions of stars, about ice chips along the outer rim of the solar system and the names of moons, this year, that extends along the movements of the sky, our crooked earth and our crookeder sun, the star that isn't in the constellation of the swan. Because we are living in a gray area now, there's no reason to assume that August 1, when Saturn and Jupiter have their last kiss, will have anything to do with you or us. And the fact that I never really needed you enough will not be so important. I look up in the sky outside of your house. I have no way to read this endless black turning thing over my head that I have always loved. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Eileen. That was just brilliant. We're going to hear some. We're going to hear from Oilibhéar, Diarmuid now, and then afterwards we'll have a bit of a Q&A with the two of you, and then it's going to be thrown open to people. Okay. Thank you. Oilibhéar, Diarmuid.
Thank you, Jess, and thank you, Eileen, for that wonderful reading. It's a hard act to follow. This is an excerpt from a novel that I'm writing at the moment, and it's in the form of a dream diary. 1st January 2019. Waking at 4 a.m. after 2 hours of sleep to note down the dream I had. I went to sleep drunk, and so my dream was like a continuation of all that happened last night. Instead of getting the taxi home from town, we waited at the taxi rank beside the river and then turned around in the river and hopped on these little sailboats, one for me, one for each of the girls I was out with. In the dream, it was 2 of my actual friends, and 2 girls whom I think were people I vaguely know who come into work sometimes. We sailed to the bookshop that we all owned together. It was morning by the time we arrived. The bookshop was under siege, so we all went upstairs and fired arrows at the windows at the tiny knights who were attacking us from the pavement. 3rd of January. So many assorted people from all walks of my life in last night's dream. My aunt, my statistics lecturer, 2 of the GAA lads from my year in secondary school, and a woman who I think I recognised as Cornelia Funk, the author of the Inkart series. She looked like her author photo anyway. I went and looked after I woke up. We were playing a game that was a mix between rounders and hockey, and somehow I understood the rules very well. I think I played it professionally. We were also playing truth or dare in between rounds of the game. After we spent the afternoon doing that, the pitch got stormed by a mob of characters from The Simpsons with flaming torches. I wasn't too bothered. They weren't there for me. I hopped on my bicycle and went home. When I got there, my housemates had a big banner up that said "Welcome Home Con," as if I'd been gone on holiday. 4th of January. I was in a tall skyscraper in a dark city. Cork, perhaps. It looked like the Cork of my childhood, the one through which we'd drive when we were starting the journey home from family Christmas parties. Well, it had the same feeling as that Cork, but the city was all skyscrapers like the one I was in. I was in a cramped office with 2 men who were arguing, and I was ignoring them and looking out the window. The buildings all looked like very simple ones you would draw as a kid, all identical windows lit up butter yellow. Another stormy dream. The storm was high above us, no rain, but I could see the clouds, again like clouds in a child's drawing. Lightning struck the building next to us, lighting up the office a blinding white, and I was so terrified. 6th of January. I was on a pier with my grandparents. They were throwing me a birthday party, and we were all dressed in black. My grandmother looked like Peg, with a black shawl and dress. The dream was all in black and white now that I think of it. The wind was strong, whipping our clothes back and forth, and my grandfather was having trouble staying upright. All of a sudden, with a groan, the pier started to upend itself and sink into the water. It was like how the Titanic sank in the film, slowly diverting from horizontal to vertical. We sat down on the pier and waited to be tipped into the water. Right before the dream ended, I saw a face in the water. A blonde boy dressed like a Victorian, around my age. I reached out my hand. I don't remember anything past that. 9th January 2019. I believe I lucid dreamed last night. It's the first time I've ever been aware of a dream while in it. I was in the hospital ward I went to when I had to get my appendix out, and I got up from the bed, ripped out something that was attached to me that I think was a heart monitor, and went out the door. When I left, the setting turned into the corridor from my old secondary school. I realised then that it was a dream because this didn't seem normal. There were people walking past me, figures that were mostly taller than me. Since I was aware that it was a dream, I started thinking about something I read once about dreams, that your brain can't make up a new face, so everyone you see in a dream is someone you've seen before, whether it be someone from your life or someone you've just seen on the street. I wanted to test this theory, so I looked up at the passers-by. They didn't have real faces at all. They had mannequin heads with paper faces that seemed to have been printed out and messily glued onto their smooth styrofoam heads. 12th January. The blonde boy again from my dream with the pier. I wonder if the thing about your brain not making up new faces is true, and if so, where do I know him from? I was following him around a maze that had tiny fairy doors every few meters. He wasn't dressed in such an old-fashioned way this time, just in jeans and a t-shirt. The shirt was green with one of those spirals on it that TV shows use to denote hypnosis. I couldn't look at it for too long. I was afraid it would induce a seizure. He always had his back to me, and I couldn't catch up to him, but somehow I knew that it was the same boy from my dream the other night. He managed to go through one of the fairy doors, even though they were only a foot tall, and I lost him then. 20th January. I had collected every lamp that we have in the house and brought them all up to my room. I was using them as protection against the sapling of banshees and vampires who were trying to come in my window. In the dream, sapling was the word for a group of them. I stacked up all the lamps against my window, and they fit perfectly together like Lego blocks. I could hear the monsters spitting gravel against my window. I wasn't that scared in the dream. It wasn't like a nightmare. I think I knew they would eat me if they got in, but I was just really tired and wanted to go to bed, and I couldn't while all the lights were on. 21st January. I went to sleep really early, so I've woken up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat. I had a continuation of last night's dream with the monsters outside my window, as if I can escape from them during the day, but at night they come back. They had cracked my window. I was admiring the cracks, thinking they looked like beautiful, delicate little spiderwebs. I knew that the window wouldn't hold out long, though. The lamps began to tip over and smash on my floor, and I went to get the dustpan to clean it up. When I went downstairs, the blonde boy was standing outside the kitchen window. All the monsters were congregated at the top of the house, so they hadn't noticed him. I could faintly hear him singing. He was singing one line over and over, the line from the Hozier song It Will Come Back, which goes, "You'll hear me howling outside your door." 24th January. I haven't dreamt in a few days, but I can't stop thinking of the last dream I had, and I couldn't help but note down what I was feeling about it. Every time I go down to the kitchen, I can picture him standing outside in the garden, particularly when I go down at night. In the dream, it was dark outside. I think it might have been daytime, but the cloud of monsters blocked out the sun, but he stood out clear as day. Wearing the same outfit he had in the maze dream, but I could see his face this time. His eyes were huge. I didn't remember this at the time to be able to note it down, but I remember more details the more I think about it, which is unusual. They talk about people having sea blue eyes, but his weren't just the color of the sea, but the texture too. I could see the waves in his eyes, the sea foam, as if I would get my fingers wet if I reached in there. He was beautiful. 25th January. The more you think about your dreams, remember them, write them down, the more dreams you have. I think that's true. I read it on a site that talked about lucid dreaming. I've been thinking about learning to lucid dream, but I'd be afraid of something like the faceless mannequins incident happening again. Anyway, right back into it, which I guess is a result of having had my last dream so stuck in my brain for the past few days. I had one of those dreams last night that feels like it spans years. I graduated college in it. I had a whole different class from the one I do now. I think I might have skipped a year, which I don't think is something you can do in college. I became a scientist, but not like a real-world one, the kind you imagine yourself being when you're a child. I spent my days mixing acid green and purple juices in test tubes and creating volcanic explosions that made my hair stand on end. I had a wife and child. I had nightmares within the dream. I thought my baby would turn out to be a demon, but I loved him when he arrived. I grew old. Right before I was about to die, that boy came back. He whispered, "Listen." I died, then I woke up. 5th of February. I can't stop thinking about him. I keep looking out for him in the street. He hasn't been in my dreams in the past few weeks, very mundane stuff. I dream about filling out my lab reports for class and about going to Aldi. I'm back in college, so I guess maybe my brain is working overtime, with third year going on, adjusting to living independently again, and my subconscious doesn't have time for fiction. Do I miss him, though? I miss him. I would try to paint him if I could. This is so strange, but I took the bus out to the beach the other day to try and pinpoint the color of his eyes. It was too sunny, though. The sea was too green. His eyes were more grey, like the sea on a stormy day. It's always with the storms in my dreams, somehow. I wonder how I managed to tell the color of his eyes from all the way across the room. I wonder if in the dream I moved closer and I just don't remember it. Where do I know him from? 6th February. I dreamed about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. I was at a football match, one of the ones I'd go to in secondary school to be able to get out of class. There were no spectators, just the 2 teams. Way more people than there'd normally be on each team, though, perhaps 40 on each. It was chaotic. Then the horsemen came. Each horse maybe 25, 30 feet tall. Flies buzzing around them, patches of skin missing from them, so you could see their disease-ridden flesh, and in the case of Famine's horse, its exposed ribcage. Everyone had quietly left, and the horses stood in the middle of the field. They seemed aimless, waiting for something perhaps, for the end of the world. I felt so tiny. I wanted the boy to be there, remember thinking about him within the dream, though I wasn't aware that it was a dream, but I couldn't feel his presence. Pestilence looked me in the eyes, and I felt vomit rising up my throat. I woke up. I skipped class today to stay in the warmth of my bed with the curtains drawn. I'm not feeling too okay after that. 8th of February. I've been scared to sleep for the past 2 days. The Horsemen dream really shook me up, and I keep seeing them every time I close my eyes. I passed out around 2:30 in the morning, but I didn't have a nightmare this time. I dreamed I was at a party with everybody I could possibly think of from college. People from my class, from societies, my lecturers, random people I see around the corridors, everyone. It felt like a party in some American high school film, the Red Solo Cups that did it. I was drinking a vodka cranberry. I went over and talked to the boy. He was in the corner and everyone looked at me all funny when I walked over to him. I chatted to him like we were old friends. Maybe we were. I don't remember the specifics of what we were talking about. All I remember is him looking me in the eye and saying, "Do you know who I am?" I said yes. 9th of February. I wonder why I said yes. I don't know his name. I don't know anything about him. Someone I met before, perhaps, and then forgot. Some inhabitant of my subconscious from times gone by. He asked if I knew who he was, but perhaps I was answering the question, "Do you know me?" I feel like I do. 14th February. Waking up on the morning of Valentine's Day to the memory of another nightmare. My teeth crumbling, falling out of my mouth. They felt like popcorn, the way the whiteness of it melts in your mouth around the rocky kernels. I'm pretty sure I've read that teeth falling out is a really common dream. I think I've had it once or twice before. I just looked it up and it symbolizes loss, apparently. I don't know what I've lost. 18th February. Dreamed that I was driving. Strange, because I don't plan to learn anytime soon. The idea of being in control of what's basically a giant metal bug is scary to me. But I was driving on an empty highway in America and I felt so tiny behind the wheel of the car. I felt like I was about 9 years old, skinny and waif-like. I could barely see onto the road. I think I was definitely my younger self. So I was driving pretty slowly and there was desert around me. It's what I always imagine when Americans talk about road trips. It was dry, hot, arid. The air felt dusty as if it was full of spices. Ochre and scarlet. The dust got so thick that I could only see about 10 meters in front of me, but I still felt calm. I just kept driving. This huge black dog appeared out of the dust. A wolf. I stopped the car and got out and walked towards him. I knelt down on the ground in front of him and he lay down, so I did too, and we just lay together in the middle of the road. The rest of his pack came up and collapsed around us. We stayed like that for a long time. Eventually, each animal came to me and put its paw on my head before leaving to run off into the landscape. They disappeared into the mountains and I was alone again. The car was gone. I started to walk. 23rd February. I've been sick, so I've been dreaming a lot. Half dreaming, sort of, drifting in and out, feverish. I dreamed that I'm in my bed, curled up in the lamplight, but that other people are there too. I kept looking at my chair and thinking it was Laura. It seemed plausible that she'd be here, though she's been gone for 3 years now. I've really not been well, and I think I assumed I was dying, not seriously, but in my adult state. She was talking to me about our dad and telling me stories from before I was born. They were so nonsensical, but then again, so was everything she used to make up. I haven't dreamed about Laura in a long time. I used to a lot after she died. The fever brings things up from the past, I guess. I'm not quite over the flu yet, but this is the first time I've been able to write in the past week or so. 24th February. The flu has messed with my senses, so the texture of towels became all of a sudden unbearable to me last night. I was standing over the sink washing my hands, and then I took the towel, and it was so rough I threw up into the sink. I don't remember past that, and I woke up in my bed, so I'm really not sure if it was a dream or not. Noting it down just in case. 28th February. Feeling better. I had the least scary dream I've had in a while. They were all pretty chaotic while I was sick. In this one I was at a teacup ride at the fun fair. I was pretty tired and was curled up in the bottom of the teacup. They were made out of real china. He was there. The first time in a really long time, actually, 3 weeks. I hopped off the ride to go and talk to him, and he said, "You've been missing." It reminded me of a conversation I had had in college, so I figured it was the same kind of thing, and I said I had the flu. He said he had too, and that he had been out of college. It seemed like the right thing in the dream for me to go off on a long tangent about how we mirrored each other, so I did. He listened, but he looked tired. We sat on the edge of the teacup ride, spinning around slowly, and were silent a while. 2nd March. Him again tonight. The same place, I feel like, but the fun fair was gone. It was just an empty car park by the sea. I lay in one of the parking spaces and he in another beside me. The sun was setting. He started to tell me about the fever dreams he had had when he had been ill. It is so strange that my mind is now making up dreams inside my dreams. Dreams for him to tell me, but not for me to actually have. These dreams about him have been like lucid dreams, but also not. I'm not aware they're dreams, but they seem like part of my real life. I feel like me in them. I only know they're not real because they don't have beginnings and ends. I don't remember walking home from the car park. 3rd of March. We were back in the same place again tonight. The car park, but dark this time. I looked at my watch. I don't have a watch in real life. It was one of those big chunky digital watches. I haven't seen anyone wear one of those since maybe 2nd year of secondary school. It was midnight. He was there, of course. He smiled and said, "You're back again." We talked for about 7 hours, 7 real hours within the dream. I kept checking my watch. A lot of what we talked about was nonsensical dream dialogue. Poetry, kind of. I haven't read a whole lot of poetry, but the way we were speaking sounded almost Shakespearean. I think if you translated that to real life, it wouldn't make sense, but within the dream it made absolute sense. My alarm went off, but I was still in the dream, so it sounded like it was coming from the sky. An air raid siren. The boy sighed and said time to go and winked. I woke up at 7. I had been within the dream for exactly 7 hours. Thank you.
Thank you, Ollie. That was fascinating. I love hearing about dreams. Ollie, Oilibhéar and Eileen are going to chat now for a bit about their work. But first of all, I'd just quickly like to thank Linda Norton and Alice Lyons, as well as the library, for all their help. Is it okay to ask a couple of questions, Eileen and Oilibhéar?
Otherwise, I think we will be dumbfounded. We'll sit here. We need you.
Well, that was brilliant. Eileen, first of all, welcome to Sligo virtually. You've been in Ireland before, but it's great to have you here. Can I just ask you about your puppet film, which I just watched recently, The Trip?
Oh, sure.
Well, basically, I really enjoyed it because puppets are great. And would you tell people about that, maybe?
Well, I think that I just have a friend who is a filmmaker, and we did that thing that you often do with artist friends, where he said we should make something sometime, and I was like, yeah, we should make something. But here in Marfa, it's virtually, it's a little art town. There's not much in terms of services, so you're always driving to the next town over, which is Alpine, which is like a real town, and there's a 25-mile drive, which is like about a half hour, and it's crazy because it's just lined with big, gorgeous mountains, so that it's though it's a duty to go to the next town, it's just utterly gorgeous, and especially for somebody who's still, I've only been living here off and on for 5 years, so there was this beautiful ride, and I always want to do. I have these childhood puppets I made, at a Catholic youth organization after school program when I was about 9. And oddly, they're one of, I've lost so much in my life, but I have not lost the puppets. So I always inject the puppets into my work whenever possible because they're just sort of like my art action, And so suddenly I thought, what if the puppets went on a road trip to Alpine, And so that basically was the plot. And we made a Super 8 film, which is just so rough and funky and perfect for puppets. And then, of course, being close to the border here, there's no way to not talk about, children being incarcerated at the border. And also, because I grew up in a kind of fucked up alcoholic family, the trauma of my childhood was just inherently in the puppets, like their little swollen heads looked like my dad died when I was quite young, and he kind of comes into my dreams intermittently, and usually, which I'm very connected to your work, Ollie. I'm obsessed with dreams, and it was such a cool novel. But it's just like, so each iteration of the puppet's head just felt like it carried all this trauma and pain, no matter what the puppet said. So it's a very, it's like an 18-minute film. If you could just go on YouTube, just Eileen Myles, The Trip, you can find it. But it was very exciting because I've been I've been around film in recent years, and I dated a TV writer, film producer, 5 years ago, and it thrust me into that world. And I wrote a screenplay for Chelsea Girls, and nothing happened. And I've written I've become like, that world of writing is really pretty particular, which is to say that you can write a lot, you can even make money, and nothing happens. It's very weird for a poet, where I write a poem and I read it very soon, and you write a screenplay and zip, but you earn, X amount of money, which is crazy. So what was great about making this film was that to be able to act like an artist and just go in and make something fast and cool. And both, both Michael and I were very fast. We were really happy with the production. I said Michael, I mean David. David Fenster is the filmmaker's name, but I wrote the screenplay, he shot it, we kind of edited it together, but he largely edited it. Yeah, it was. I want to do another.
I love that puppets were going around basically traumatized by having been imprisoned in a picnic basket for 60 years, and they kept complaining about how they'd been in this basket prison in this cage for years.
Not been an extravagant life.
Yeah. I'd recommend anybody watch that. And Oilibhéar, your work on dreams that's a fairly new direction, because people who have come to the word in the flesh in the library over the years, you've been a regular. You're always reading usually poetry at the word. So is this a whole new direction, or is it like a side thing, or how did you get started writing about dreams?
Yeah, so this is kind of like my main project right now. This is something I started in my nonfiction module last year, which just born out of a sort of coincidence, but then I really latched onto it. And really my interest in dreams started a lot earlier than that. Started testosterone at the start of last year, and maybe a few weeks later, my dreams immediately became a lot more tactile, more sensory. As in, I could feel things in the dreams, I could smell things in the dreams, stuff like that, in a way I could never before. So I was thinking about the experience of being more comfortable with my trans body, and then having that transfer over into my subconscious, and writing about that. And the novel is about there being a character who comes into this person's life through his dreams. And beforehand, his dreams made no sense, but now the character adds a sort of linearity and narrative to his dreams, so that they become like a story. And I thought that was an interesting. That's partly based off of real life as well. But yeah. Also, the dreams that I was writing about last year in the nonfiction class were obviously nonfiction, my own dreams. But it's actually kind of harder to create fictional dreams, because you're trying to instill that sense of non-realism, and it's actually quite hard to recreate the sort of stuff that goes in on your subconscious. But I'm doing my best with it.
Well, you're doing really great. It sounds fantastic, and you're a very prolific writer of poetry. Like, you've written like an awful lot more poems than most people. Do you have a practice? Do you have a routine?
No, I actually really don't. Most of my poetry gets written at 3 a.m. when I'm kind of pacing around the kitchen table being insane, and I just write whatever comes into my head, and it's usually just kind of a mess in my notes app, and then it gets translated into something a bit more readable and a bit more, performable at readings and such, like when I'm in a less insane space. But yeah, it starts off as a mess, and there really is no routine to it. I don't just sit down and write. I have to be in a very specific mental state.
Okay, that makes sense. Eileen, you obviously have been writing for decades and are extremely successful and prolific. Do you have a routine, or is that a very banal question?
Yes and no. I mean, I think likewise, it just feels like poems are very breakout. I think the thing that's cool about writing in more genres than poetry is that poetry continues to be a form of rebellion for me. And so I think the other night I was trying to write something, and I thought that I should kind of import some data in. I just thought, for some reason, I thought I wanted to use the sky and the there's a nice observatory near where I'm living here, and so I subscribe to their magazine, which is called Star Date, and I get these cool issues of what we can see up in the sky this week, etc. And so I just sat down very deliberately and kind of researched what's up there right at this moment. And it was for some other purpose, but instantly, I was feeling some kind of some difficulty in my relationship right now, and it was so great that the sky just gave me a poem, which was not my intention. So I think that like I haven't been watching vampire TV shows in order to write poems, but it's like the thing that's so cool about poetry is it just winds up being this kind of strange container that is always ready to absorb whatever's floating around. So it's just, I guess, poetry started in disaffection for me, and I think it sort of continues that way. I was feeling very grumpy the other night, and then I knocked out 3 vampire poems, and I thought, what the hell, this is great. Whereas other kinds of writing, it's often, like I write a lot of, I write about art, and so I do it often with commissions, and so it's just like, I got to knock it out, and so I'm a little bit more like, I give it what I consider the brightest, most, conscious part of the day. So I tend to get up and drink whatever caffeine I'm imbibing and walk the dog and get to it, and likewise with a novel, but even that's changing. I feel like I think discipline is just a slippery thing. And I think sometimes I feel like I'm moving more towards games, like trying to game my my writing practice rather than, kind of like, I think maybe 20 years ago, I was very about being in this tip top condition to write, waking up and drinking a lot of caffeine and running and meditate. I mean, I was just this perfect person would arrive at the desk. And that did work for one summer, but actually I'm not sure that I've been that person ever since. Though if I go to an artist colony, it's like there's nothing to do but write, and you're sort of an idiot if you sit, jacking off in your studio or, watching TV. It's just like you may as well write, But yeah, I'm all over the place with it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. In Chelsea Girls, you write about an earnest unwillingness to be part of the bunch, which a lot of us can relate to. But do you still feel like that, or do you feel maybe that commercial success might wear away at that?
No, because I think the thing that's so interesting is that you're always, or I mean, I can't say you, but I, whatever success is very relative. It's as relative as fame is. I mean, you might think, whoa, I'm kind of like a very well-known poet, and then you move over to the other side of the room, and these people have no idea who you are. And in terms of conventional award, at least in the States, like I've never been nominated, not even once, for any major book award, not even longlisted, so I think there's still a queer trans out there. Also, I'm 71 years old. It's sort of like I was supposed to get discovered 40 years ago, so whatever I do now, no matter how influential I am, I'm still a bit of a dark horse. But the thing that's good is obviously I'm successful enough to not have to work, you know what I mean? Like, or I work, but I don't work in any way that I don't want. And so that's great. I mean, I want to go happily. Today, I just learned that Chelsea Girls is finally being translated into French, which is, I can't tell you. I mean, it's like I've actually waited like decades for that to be the case. Like when the books first came out in the 90s, somebody was translating it into French, and I was like, whoa, I'm on my way. And the translator died in the middle of translating the book, and that was it. I've never had another shot at being in French, and so it's just whatever success, it's just still the strange little studio of self and my discomfort and my joys. You just write as what you are and what you've got, and I mean, I consider myself lucky just simply because I have a work that I love, and it seems like to keep making it be something else is always the challenge. To not actually, I will say in 2016, I got a lot of attention. And the thing that was really funny then was that what the publishing industry wanted me to do was write a memoir in which I would say how I became Eileen Myles. And other than that, they just didn't want it. They didn't want anything. And I was writing a weird dog memoir, and I got no money. Nobody wanted that book. So it's so interesting to always think I do something, I wait for the party or the award, and it doesn't come, and then I'm stuck writing again. So it's very funny I mean, there are other stories that other writers have, but mine is very motley.
In
And
2016,
I think
did
part
you
of that
write?
is about queer. Pardon me?
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to
just
say, I
saying.
think about queerness. I think queerness makes you always on a certain fringe, but please go ahead.
I was just going to say, in 2016, didn't you write an inauguration speech? And you ran for president before, back in the 90s?
Mm-hmm.
Would you run again?
No, but I think, it's obviously, it's such a, to run for president in America is such a cartoon statement. It's so equivalent to being a poet in terms of, you're just a professional person, And so I think that I'm still running, and there's a way that if you've done something like that, you just never ends. Every time there's an election, I get contacted by so many people saying, "Are you running? What would you do this year? What do you feel about this candidate?" So you're just permanent. If you do that ludicrous thing, you will always there's a smirky thing like, "Oh, Eileen, they ran for president," ha ha, But again, it's a way to be political. It's a way to citizenship. So it's real.
Yeah. Oilibhéar, can I get back to you and just ask you? You speak Irish and English, and you're writing in Irish and English at the moment, or are you just writing in English?
I'm doing both. I mostly write in English because that's what I'm obviously required to do for the course. But for my own free time, I write in Irish, I translate it, I write in English, translate that back. I'm working a lot in translations since the poetry module that we did in second year, wherein I discovered a lot about translation of different people's poems. I translated your poem, Jess, and we won a prize for that with class. And I've been really interested in that sense. Yeah.
That's brilliant. It's just an amazing talent to have. I think we've got about a minute left before we're going to throw this open to questions from the audience that I can't see. But Michelle is going to take those questions and put them to you guys. Is that okay? And right, we'll pass it on to Michelle. Thanks very much.
Hi guys. Right, we've got lots of comments and questions coming through, so I'm just going to go through them bit by bit. So from Sarah Clancy in Clare, she says, "Thanks so much from two Eileen Myles fans in Clare," which is another county in Ireland, just to let you know. Wonderful is a comment from Sinead McClure. Neil Young says he loves the fluency and smart observation of these poems. Brilliant from Jenny Taylor. Alice says, "Brilliant, I'm laughing, I want to see I'm out of here." I have a question for Eileen from Alice here now. When are the East River poems published?
Oh, I wrote them 2 nights. I wrote them 2 nights ago, so nowhere. I think a poet friend, Sarah Riggs, is sort of, because a lot of us are very worked up about this park, and so I was submitting a whole passel of these poems to the New Yorker, but who the hell knows what the New Yorker will care about, So they'll obviously be somewhere soon because they're new and I'm excited about them. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks, Eileen. So from Sinead McClure, she says, "Thanks so much for reading, Eileen. I have really enjoyed hearing your work." From Maeve McCormick, we have fab. Thank you, Eileen. From Linda Norton, we have thank you. And Olive Franklin, thank you again. Maeve Callahan says thank you. Michael Burke, Lindsay Gordon. Amazing honour to listen to you, Eileen. Hazel OG says thank you. Chris Rossbach says that was lovely. Maeve McCormick says, oh, she had a problem with her sound, but I hope that's okay now. Ali Stewart says, "So great to see and hear you, Eileen. We're both glued. I love your new girlfriend poem. Sending love and warm hugs from Dublin." That was from Ali Stewart, yeah. Marion says, "Great to hear you again, Eileen. Greetings from the west coast of Ireland." And that's from Marion Kilcoyne. Lindsay Gordon says, "Love the dream diary, Ollie, just for you." It's very different. Linda Norton says, wonderful developments in the Dream Diary. The eyes are like to see. Kathleen Gall says, hi, hey Eileen, you look and sound hot. My favourite NYC poet. And she had a kiss. And Olive Franklin says, thank you. Maeve McCormick says, thank you. I think this was after Ollie read a wonderful Ollie Oliver from Margaret. Hazel O'G says that was brilliant. A. Aiken says that was beautiful. Maeve Callahan says amazing, thank you. Catherine Nivrian says that was great, Ollie. And Alice says well done, Oliver. Sarah Clancy says well done, Oliver. Lindsay Gordon says loved all the pieces. These were brilliant. Sarah Clancy says lovely to hear you. Michael Burke says quite the journey, Oliver. Well done. Patricia says thanks, Ollie. Jenny Taylor has a question for Eileen. So Eileen, you're up again. Can you tell us a bit about your TV show on American history?
Well, it's sort of based in Provincetown, Mass, which is the tip of Cape Cod. And it's a very particular place. It's an art town, and it's a queer town. And but it's also where the Pilgrims landed when they first sailed to America. And supposedly they didn't, there was like nothing there. It was just a sandy little spit of land, and they had a hard time when it was a cold winter. And so they stayed there for 6 weeks, and then they're gone. And so when I first learned that, I thought, how interesting. Like basically the Pilgrims said, we're out of here, and I come from Boston, which has a particular working class accent. And so years ago, I think when there was a book about Provincetown and American history and about the Pilgrims landing, that everybody in town, like John Waters, there's a whole bunch of characters, art people who live in that town in the summer. And everybody was reading this crazy book about Provincetown history. And so I just got the idea that I should have a bunch of pilgrims with working class Boston accents, just kind of doing kind of a mix of contemporary historical, like being in Provincetown. And anyway, I wanted to write a play years ago, and I tried to get all these grants and funding for the play. And I thought it was just called Out of Here, and it would be pilgrims using the correct Boston accent and retelling American history. Nobody wanted the play. And so then a few years ago, when I had more to do with television, I even met the man who wrote Mayflower, and we had this conversation, and he was like, you should write a TV show. And I was like, fantastic. And so basically it's just what I do is I have a bunch of young people, like you probably have things like this in Ireland, like historical reenactments. Like if you go to Provincetown, there are young people, college students wearing pilgrim outfits, bringing tourists to the kind of historical sites. And so I had it be about young working class people who are those people, but that the town was in a time warp. So strangely, suddenly there would be lynchings for, adultery, and homosexuals would be tortured, and some of the interiors of the town would be pilgrim and be in the 17th century. So it's sort of like, it's kind of a sci-fi historical American and a real critique of American politics, of course, So that's where it's at. But so far, I shouldn't tell this because I think we're supposed to be really, it's like academia. You're supposed to be really covetous about your territory. But so far, nobody's been interested in this TV show, and I'm a little bit away from it now. But the thing that's weird about working on something is it becomes real. It becomes a dream, and you live in that dream all the time. I worked on it for about a year. And so all those characters are completely alive in my head. I'm working on a novel, and I started to drop the characters into the novel, but they still want to be a TV show. So it may yet happen. I think I'll just say finally, this year in America, because of the enhanced political awareness we all went through, pilgrims were not considered cool. Pilgrims were just white racists who landed in America, acted like nobody was here, and proceeded to, if not directly, indirectly destroy the indigenous people. So it wasn't a hot year for pilgrims in America. And so I think I may have to wait a little bit for my TV show. But thank you for asking.
Thanks, Eileen. That was a brilliant answer. Okay, so we have a comment from Linda Norton. Poetry continues to be a sort of breakout. When you're writing in different genres, A reminder I needed today. That was somebody quoted that today. Sinead McClure, to everyone, such an interesting conversation with both contributors. Lovely to hear a discussion on how they work. Alice says she just quotes a strange little studio of self. Linda Norton says, yes, Alice, I knew that you and I would be loving that. So you have a connection there, Alice and Linda Norton. Marion Tevian says, hi, Eileen. Do you find your writing differs when you are in Marfa?
Well, yes, because I have more space. I mean, I live in a tiny apartment in New York City that I've had since my 20s. And also New York is just very distracting. I mean, the fun of New York, even during the pandemic, is people, and art museums and galleries are still open. And there's just people, there's a datiness to it. There's a social connection I would say it's better for poetry, but that's not true because I've just written a boatload of poems here. But it's just like when I come here, I know I can just work in a way that's just so kind of, I can keep completing thoughts, which in New York, my thoughts are very truncated. I have an impulse, though, to talk to Ollie about dreams, because I think it's the most, I feel like, for me, dreams are like the perfect object. I wonder what their history with dreams are. Like, have you changed your relationship to dreams since you started using them? Did you ever consider them just ridiculous and not of value? Like, what is your philosophy of dreams?
Are we?
Would Ollie like to come in there?
Yes, yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. Yeah. Sorry. What's that?
You weren't prepared.
Yeah, no, don't worry. Yeah, since I started writing about them, I've actually gotten really, really entrenched into dreams to the point where now, like the guy in the story, like the narrator of the story that I'm writing, I find myself researching lucid dreams, thinking about it all the time during the day because I think about my writing all the time anyway. But yeah, I'm trying to learn to lucid dream, and I haven't actually learned very well yet, as in I can't do it at all. But the lucid dream in the story was based off of one that I had myself, which was really scary. So I'm trying to learn to do it in a non-scary way. But I've been looking it up all the time, and I'm fascinated by the subconscious.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Are you a Borges person? Because I never had any interest in Borges, but I read him last summer, and I think that dreams are huge, or his work seems very related to dreams for me.
That's interesting. I'll definitely look into that. Yeah. I've been reading a lot of stuff about dreams, but weirdly it's completely coincidental. Like as soon as I started writing about dreams, everything I started reading seemed to incorporate them, even though I didn't even seek it out or anything.
I think I have a theory. I feel like dreams are like the invention of art. Like where would you get the idea to make these images and stuff? And meanwhile, this thing is just happening involuntarily. And I can't imagine that people did.
Whether there's a sort of, not an ethical issue, but an issue with writing down dreams, as in like, is this art that I'm creating myself, or is it stolen art? Because I didn't make it up, I made it up subconsciously. Right. And that's something I was thinking about a lot when I was writing about it in nonfiction class.
That's very funny. Like, are dreams nonfiction?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have a comment from Jenny Taylor. She's hoping that you get to make the TV show, Eileen, at some stage. Sarah Clancy wants us to talk more about dreams, which you have, which is brilliant. Lindsay Gordon has said, I have written pieces based on dreams many times. They are a great thing to take inspiration from. Olive Franklin says, for both, do you write about real or imagined people in your poems? What makes you want to write about someone? When you write about people who are imaginary, what space do you think those figures are pushing in? What space do you think those figures are pushing into? So, Eileen, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I don't know any imaginary people. I don't know. I mean, they could be historical characters or somebody I've read about. But and I also honestly don't understand the idea of fictionalizing a character. I don't think I have that capacity. But I do believe that when I use, quote, my real life in my writing, I do believe it's fictional. You know, I don't trust the veracity of my account. And also, I think once I started writing something, it starts distorting. And so that, I mean, like, I just feel like the fiction, nonfiction distinction is pretty ludicrous, you know. And again, I think back to dreams. I feel like dreams it's so funny to ask if dreams are nonfiction, I think. And like, what is this? And I don't understand why any other kind of writing, I mean, the idea of journalism being objective is ludicrous. The idea of fiction not being tell-all is kind of ludicrous. I mean, if you're close to anyone, you always know by reading their texts exactly where things are. You know, you might change a name. I mean, in my most recent book, For Now, it's very much, it's a talk about writing that then I mean, Yale published this book, and I gave a talk. It took an hour, and then I owed them 13,000 more words to finish the book and to get the rest of the money. And I had to go through this thing. But it's very much about writing, but also about having a little cheap apartment in New York City that I was potentially going to lose. And my landlady was trying to get me out of my building. And her name is very funny, you know, and I think my agent, somebody, or my publisher, somebody told me I couldn't actually, that I would really possibly, oh, I know, my lawyer for the court case about keeping the apartment, he was, you better not use her name in this book because it could incriminate me and help me, you know. So I had to, she had a very funny name and a perfect name, and I had to change it to, I mean, that was such a poet job, finding a name that was fictionalized. So I think the only thing I fictionalize are either by omission but very much names. I think names are the most poetic act in my novels. And that's, so they're still not imaginary people, they're just imaginary names. And I think
Okay.
Ollie.
Oh, Ollie, did you want to talk about it next?
Yes, yeah. Specifically poetry-wise, I write about real people all the time. All of my poetry is about real people, and that's how I started out writing. Because the first things I wrote were poems, and they were really just for me as a sort of event. And when I write fiction, it is based off of real people, much as I would prefer it not to be. When I write first-person narrator, the narrator of the thing that I just wrote, as much as I would prefer that he wouldn't be me, he really is, just with a different life, a different course, a different set of friends. And the boy is Malachi. That's a spoiler. That's his name. His name hasn't come into it yet. Much as I would prefer that he's not based off a real person, he is. But I think you have to have a visualization for fictional characters. And if I don't have, you know, it's like I said in the piece itself, your brain can't make up faces, so you're going to have to use a face of someone you've met before.
Great. Now we've one last final comment from Ian for everyone. I think this is in reference to your conversation on dreams, and he says he talks about them, especially if they're usually horrifying. So I think he's referring to your conversation on dreams there. So that is our last comment and question. So thanks everybody on Zoom for joining in for that, and all your lovely comments for Eileen and Ollie. That's fantastic. I'm just going to open up to the open mic now. So we have 5 names for the open mic. So I'm just going to go to Ian Doherty, please. Ian, you're on mute. You're on. You're
Can you hear me?
Good.
When I was 12, my dad took me hunting for the first time. I didn't want to go. Guns scared me. Seeing him gut kills, it always made me feel sick, and I hated the thought of hurting animals. I didn't even like to kill spiders, but he made me go. Thought I was too soft, too effeminate. He pointed out how my brother loved to hunt, how my sister loved to hunt, and how even my grandmother had hunted. I didn't want to be a sissy, did I? My mom wasn't much help. She had gotten tired of my crying after I ran over a frog with a lawnmower. Even she wanted me to toughen up. So hunting we went. Now, hunting is a dumb sport for a variety of reasons, but chief among them is that most of it is just laying in a patch of grass or on a platform in a tree just waiting for animals to wander by. The trickiest part is keeping track of which way the wind is blowing. We spent most of the day walking to the right hunting grounds. Another chunk just watching trees. He was in his full camo outfit, even a hat. I was in a green hoodie. He wanted me to start off small. I had a .22 caliber rifle, just a step up from a BB gun. We were hunting rabbits, so I wasn't very quiet. I was hoping to scare them away. I would want to kill something so cute and harmless. So I loudly fidgeted, I hummed to myself, and I asked frequently for bathroom breaks, wherein I would start singing. All of this much to his chagrin. If we didn't catch anything, he was going to be pissed. That was okay. He usually was, for whatever reason. Despite my efforts, though, a rabbit wandered into my line of sight in the waning afternoon hours. I noticed it before he did. I had the chance to warn it away, but I froze. He nudged me to take the shot. I wanted to say no, but my voice got in my throat. The rabbit seemed so blissfully unaware of anything. Its fur was brown like chocolate. It was close enough that I could see its nose twitching. I waited for it to sense us somehow and run away, but it didn't. Take the shot, he growled at me under his breath. I was afraid to say no. I thought it would just shoot high and say I missed. I lined up the sight to miss. I put my finger on the trigger. The rabbit seemed to notice me finally. It dashed away at the same time I fired, and I hit it. The shot was bad. The slug hit it in the abdomen. We ran up to it. It was on its side. The lower half of its body wasn't moving, but its front legs were thrashing like it was still trying to run away, and it was screaming. Most people think rabbits are mute, but if you've ever heard one scream, trust me, you will never forget it, and you will want to. My dad slapped me on the back of the head. He had already been frustrated and I was taking the fun out of murder. God damn it, son, I told you to shoot straighter than that. I was hysterically crying by this point. I begged him to try to help it. Only one way to help. You gotta double tap. I have to this day never wanted to do anything less. Thumper here is suffering. You have to put it out of its misery. You would think after letting me watch Bambi 30 times, you might understand my distress a little better. Still, I began to comply. He was right, I suppose. The rabbit had gone still, but it was still screaming. Though I was right on top of it, my hands were shaking so much I could barely hold the gun. Kill the bunny, he was screaming now. I shot the rabbit in the head and he was finally quiet. I'm sorry, I sobbed. Yeah, whatever, he grumbled as he picked up the now faceless rabbit carcass, hoping to salvage something from this day. I wasn't talking to him. He took me hunting a few more times after that. He didn't always buy that I was sick. But wouldn't you know it, my aims were even worse. Couldn't hit a damn thing. Eventually, he gave up on me. He still made me eat some of that rabbit, though. Rabbit meat tastes horrible. Why does anyone hunt them? I can't be the only person confused as to they are the only animal on Earth that is seemingly both a pet and game. I get that to farmers, that might be a passport and a douchebag turns killing things that can't possibly be a threat into a hobby. That's how I felt about violence when I was young. Any kind. At school, I would run away when kids bullied me, which was all the time. At home, I did the same thing, but to limited success. But over time, slowly but surely, I grew more comfortable with it. You can only cry for so long until you realize the world doesn't care. Your weakness is an invitation for predators, and your tears won't stop them, and your screams won't either. I know that now, but I still hear that rabbit now and then, mostly at work. Thank you.
So, hello. Let me present a few poems to you. A botanical story. Peels scattered around my liver did not give me second life. I'm still stuck between here, where nurturing my last dream seems a fruitless action, and there, where we could eat each other, binge loving without remorse. I'm doomed to feel for not growing what they expect. One day, the world will be perfumed with the pride of a flower planted on my piece of ground. But now, I vegetate in between until death puts me together. Departure. The fog looks quite clear today. I stumble over here and there, knees beaten by stray glass. They don't hold a grudge. Forgive me, baby, but you gotta go without me. I'm already far away. Trashy masochism amuses the driver. Untitled. Yours, alluring but unapproachable. Mine, always moist in your company. They only met once in a cruelly formal gesture. Our hands, lovers without lips. And the final one, a gap. 30 years between us are as tasty as chocolates off the top shelf I never buy. Because I'm just an ex-student. No, not doing my PhD, as you wished when you were on a date, drinking black coffee at your mahogany desk, too posh for me to lie down. Thank you.
Now we now have Margaret Hoffman.
Good evening. My poem is And the Children Played. And the children played with their teddy bears and rag dolls, tea parties in the woods with army ration packs, hunted for Easter eggs, and made paper chains to hang from the ceiling at Christmas. On wet days, they made forts of furniture and blankets, played board games, had jigsaw puzzle races, painted under-the-sea watercolors, drew pictures of imagined houses where they wished to live happily ever after, taught themselves to make sweets and baked ice buns. On dry days, they explored the lightning-struck willow grove, relaxing in the fecund green light. They caught freshwater crabs at the dam and brought them home in buckets, kept tadpoles in jars and guppies in glass salad bowls, transitioned silkworms in boxes stuffed with mulberry leaves, teased acid-spitting beetles and antlions from their dusty homes, tracked spoor through the scrub and felt, secretly observing shy creatures. They fled from cobras, spiders, boomslang, and baboons, climbed jacaranda trees in full lilac bloom, watched bantam chickens and geese raise their young, protecting them from hawks and wildcats. They ran with their dogs over 1,000 acres of bush, returning home scratched and bruised, covered in ticks, burrs, and blackjack seeds. Minutely ruffling through fur and picking at hide, they deticked the dogs and each other, throwing the blood-fat bodies into the fire, falling asleep in a grubby heap on the Persian rug. Thorns were dug out of their feet with needles, and spit was dabbed on insect bites. On Beacon's Cop, they scaled sheer rocks with bare hands and feet, using knees and elbows as fulcrums in vertical crevices. They sped barefoot, screaming round the black forested lawn to see who could stand the pain the longest before putting on their little white school socks and brown shoes. Bathed for hours together under mounds of shampoo foam, drawing pictures on each other's freckled backs with pruny fingers. Read books and comics in the garden, on the loo, in the car, staying up late in bed, unable to sleep till the next page and the next. In civilization, they swam in mosaic pools with schools of friends, rode bicycles for miles, freewheeling with no bars or pedals, played French cricket, read Rover, kicked the can and tag, did their homework and chores, weeding vegetables, cooking, laying the table, washing dishes, scrubbing pots, feeding animals, polishing shoes, and gathering firewood. And roars and screams, fists and slaps of mummy and daddy grew loud and heavy, spiced with brandy, coke, and ginger ale. They would dormice curl together in a single bed, under a candlewick cover, eyes closed, hoping they wouldn't be dragged from their nest to witness the carnage. For days, they tiptoed on eggshells, wordless, trying to be invisible till it was safe. And then the children played again. Thank you.
That's great, Margaret. Thank you. So next we have Colm Lawler, please. Oh, column loader Zoom has crashed. So we'll go straight on to Neil Young, please.
Hello. Hi, can you hear me?
Is that Neil or column?
No, it's Neil. Hi. Hello.
Oh, hi, Neil. How's it going?
Hi. Hello from Aberdeenshire. It's my first Zoom reading. It's a bit discombobulating, isn't it? Especially when you don't have interaction with an audience. But I'll give you a couple of quick poems. This is called Linen. You think you know your past, but then you find some things have hidden meaning. Not just the older pictures or your granny's watch, the table linen, wrapped and kept for best in a drawer, but not because it waited for a queen or star to come to for tea, because it was the way the women stitched the beauty from existence, made a room more than a function. The smallest stain would be a sacrilege. This is how the ones who blur between the photos bless the next with social standing, because although they may not own a table, they'd have the cloth. This outlasts the repo man, divorces, war and emigration. This the thread that passes from the linen through each hand. This is called Grooviness Squares, from a recollection of an incident in 2002 where I was present, and Grooviness Square used to be the site of the American Embassy in London. There was this fella, Daddy was. Don't ask me why he was there, but not to protest against war, I'm guessing. Unless a sleeping bairn in a pram was his covert weapon. Because just as the riot broke out and people were scattering, charging, surging, trampling everywhere, and smoke bombs thickened, flames were rising, and up on the wall of the US Embassy, 3 masked demonstrators were strutting, burning the stars and stripes to the roar and salutes of the crowd. And just as we could hear the first incoming clatter of hooves, he was right in front of me, lifting the pram. And me and 2 women, without any prompting, grabbed an end each and hoisted the wean, still sleeping through the whole shebang, onto the pavement beside the side street. And then the dad was shouting, stranded. So all of us lifted him. He was crowd surfed to the edge of the riot and smiling, laughing, thanking us as he was planted down with his child, then hurrying off from the scene. And that was the instant I hunched down low, just in time to miss the shattering glass from the pub windows and the robo-cops as they zigzagged on the street and swiped through bodies and smoke. And it makes me wonder, these many years later, why it was so easy to lift a small child backwards in a pram through a riot when millions of us couldn't stop a war. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. We have Colin now, I think. Right, so we've got Colin back, but before we go, just because I know Ian was saying how, or Neil was saying how difficult it is to read in front of kind of an empty space and I get response. So I'm just going to read you a few of the comments for the open mic. So from Sarah Clancy, from Ian, we have a great piece. Eileen Moynihan says, very good, Ian. A. Atkins says, wonderful and moving. Hazel OG says, these pieces are great. Well done, everyone. Tony Keenan says, love the rabbitude. Well done. Marion says, enjoyed that very much, Ian. Michael Burke says, amazing piece, Ian. Well done from Ben Redhead. Eileen Moynihan says, thanks, Natalia. Olive Franklin says, thanks for reading, Natalia. Wonderful. Margaret, great stuff, Margaret and Natalia from Hazel OG. Wonderful, Margaret from Eileen Monaghan. A meal to everyone. Oh, yeah, that's just about Colin when he's back now. Eileen Monaghan again to Margaret, that was wonderful. And to Natalia, great stuff, Margaret and Natalia from Hazel OG. And Trish says, thanks, Margaret. And let's see. Lovely stuff from both Natalia and Margaret from Michael Burke. And Dane Golden says to everyone, such a lovely night I'm having. Can't wait to be able to go back and personally do these events in the library. Hopefully not too long. Thanks so much for all. And just another little thing just for Neil, if we were live, you wouldn't be here because you'd be in Aberdeenshire. So it's great to have you online and have this opportunity to have you here. Also, Eileen Monaghan says that was very strong, Neil. So, Olive Franklin says, thank you so much for your reading, Neil. I love the poems. Marion says, great poem, Neil. Marion says, great poem, Neil. Margaret says, Ian, Neil, gorgeous stuff. Marion says, let's see what Michael Burke says, Neil, a very strong piece, well done. So now we are going on to our final reader of the night, which is Colin, and hopefully all goes well now. Thanks. Colin, are you ready?
Yeah, I've got it now. It just froze the exact wrong moment. So I'm going to read 2 poems tonight. The first one, I think I read at the Word like a year and a half ago, but I'm committed to reading it now, so I'm going to read it anyway. It's called Happiness. Happiness is something I've longed for, but I think I know more now about what it isn't than what it is. It is not public transport. It is not sharp abuse. It is not homophobia, and it is not my mother. Happiness is a hell-bent thing, heaven sent to drag me down. I grasp gasping for another strand to pull me. The need of it is natural. The want of it is human. The lack of it is killing me. The nature of it a mystery. I resign to wonder at it forever. Happier men were far more clever. Some afternoon, I am standing by the window, wondering if happiness will ever cross my threshold. Then he walks in, makes me a cup of coffee, and says, "Here, I brought you some chocolate." And I kiss happiness, for he has come home. The second poem I'm going to read, if you're at the last word, I talked about how I was writing a poetry collection about my granny, and this is one of the poems from that prospective collection. It is important to know, for the context of the poem, that her name was Rose. You planted roses in my soul that will bloom forever. Your leaves, your thorns, your memory, a part of me wherever I go. I don't want to be sad about you. I don't want my daily thought of you to be about your absence. I want to think of you and smile at a joke you once told, or of how exactly you made this particular kind of dessert. I don't want to think about your embalmed cadaver laid out on a table in your bedroom, still, unnaturally quiet. I want to think of you in your armchair, gazing out at your huge family, with your pinprick pupils and your warm heart. You will not be a sad memory for me. You will be a present tense presence, a beacon of ethereal light still shining, a voice whispering in my ear to enjoy every moment I get on this green earth. I don't know if I will live to be 103 years and 10 months old, but I know that I will live whatever amount of time I get, not in your shadow, but in your honor. And when I grow up, I'll plant roses in the garden, even though there could never be another like you. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Sally. Thanks, Colin. Thanks, Colin. We just have a final few comments before we finish up for the evening. So from Patricia Keane from the library, which is great. She's a great evening. Fabulous starts to Word for 2021. Thanks, everyone. Sarah Clancy says, thanks so much, everyone, for the great evening. Level 5 be damned. Absolutely. Diarmuid says, well done to all the open mic readers. Eileen Moynihan says, beautiful column. Margaret says, column so touching. Olive Franklin says, beautiful column. Thank you for reading for everyone. And yeah, I think that's it. So that's the final comments. And thank you for the open mic readers. You're brilliant. And as I said, there's clouds of silver lining. So it is tough doing this on Zoom, and it's a very different environment. But we do get a chance to meet people who we may not normally get to meet in real life from abroad and around the world. So every cloud has a silver lining. So thanks for joining us for tonight's edition of The Word. Thank you, Eileen Myles, from coming all the way from West Texas, I think she's in at the moment, and probably having a better connection than the rest of us because she has the most clearest picture, I think, of us all. Thank you to Jessamine for moderating for the evening and having a very interesting Q&A. Thank you, Oliver, for reading for us. It was just amazing, a lovely story to hear, or excerpt to hear. Thank you to Alice Lyons in IT Sligo as well for helping coordinate this event, and also Studio Row for giving us all the tech support which we badly needed for tonight. And thank you everybody for joining us. So again, as I said, in February we have a very special edition. I'm just going to get to the names of them now. So in February we have Alva Smith, James Hudson, and a vocal reaction. So that's coming up in February on the last Wednesday in February, and we'll see you then. Okay, thanks a million, guys. Thanks for joining us. See you later. Bye. Go have a